Hello, folks, and welcome back to another edition of Money in Motion. Risk assets selling off a little bit today, following CPI coming in a little bit lower yesterday. So excited to talk about that. Crypto still kind of boring. Crypto equity selling off, not doing a whole lot. But Monte, anything interesting you've been looking at lately?
I don't know. I like the idea of having a secular discussion about the title, and I know it's very clickbaity. And nice job with the thumbnail. Props to you on that one. That was all CJ. Very well done. But I think the kind of just overall discussion, revolves around whether or not this bear market's over, and I don't think, or this bull market's over, and I don't think it is. I think today's actually gonna, in hindsight, like if you look back at if we're sitting next Friday doing this show, and we had a time machine and we were like looking back at the today's show, this would have been a great time to buy, in my opinion. And I'll talk a little bit about why. So
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I really don't know if the fundamentals are bullish or bearish long term. I mean, people say, "Oh, there's data that can support both sides." But ultimately, that's not how I'm gonna trade it. What I have to say in terms of my opinions on markets has almost nothing to do with how I actually trade markets, unless it's a more like high conviction, maybe individual name. But as for like the market collectively, maybe inflation picks up. I think that's very unrealistic. I see a lot of people posting charts of like how the 70s and how inflation spiked multiple times. I don't really see the catalyst which would make us do something like that in present time. But either way, like to me, I mean, we've had short signals in Dow, starting to get them in ES, starting to get them in like energy and other different types of stuff. So, I mean, we can have a pullback without maybe necessarily an end of a bull market. It's also very rare that a market like bottoms and then tops only a year later in the S&P 500. Typically, it goes on for like 2, 3, 4 years after the fact. So that statistic is, I guess, maybe a point for the bulls. But like when the system tells me to get long, like I'm just going to get long again. And right now it's telling me to be short, so I'm going to be short. Like that's how consistent returns can be made over time. But like everybody who's tried to like outsmart the perfect argument has just been wrong this entire year. So do I want to join those people? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question.
What do you think? Because you made that the title.
Yeah, I don't think the bull market's over, quite frankly. I think that we see continued positive price action. And, right now, let's just pull up some charts. The S&P. So, I mean, this has been the last couple of days, and we've been talking about the just basically insane volatility that we've been seeing in the S&P. The VIX, continuing to rise today, not too much, but still up, rates up, nearing all-time highs. So, that's worth noting as well. If this does break into new all-time highs, which I think is not, I mean, this looks strong from a technical perspective. It's putting in a series of higher lows, everything you want to see from a technical perspective. But the thing is, I think that people may be more willing to inject capital into the S&P now that it's pulled back to such a significant degree. Like this is a 4,600 to 4,450 is a pretty significant pullback, and you can say the same thing about the Nasdaq, right? 1,590 back to 1,500. That's a pretty big pullback. The S&P, lots of people talking about this gap finally being filled. Now that it has been, we can continue our move to the upside. We'll see if that's true. And today kind of started off as an ugly day with lots of things opening down, including the crypto equities, which I'll get to in a minute. But now that that gap's been filled, I think that from here we start to head back up. I think today we end the week on a positive note. We see some buy pressure come in, or we don't even need buy pressure, because I do still believe that there are lots of people that were bearish, entered bearish positions earlier in the week. And for the first time in a very long time, they're actually able to take some profit. And that in itself is enough to drive price back up. So I don't think the bull market's over. I think as long as we have people saying, that we're in a bear market or we're in a recession, and, that, you should be shorting the market on shows like Fast Money and, on other thing, not to pick on Fast Money, but on other shows as well. But,
Fade money.
Fade money. Yeah. Whenever you see that, I still think that the markets can go higher, and they will. And, all the time people conflate the economy and the markets. They're not the same. The markets can keep grinding higher, even if the economy is garbage. And I think that that's exactly what we're going to continue to see.
I mean, lowering of rates is probably the most bearish thing that could happen.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah. Agreed.
Or the market, I should be more specific, the market reacting negatively to rate cuts. That's like the ultimate news failure. Yeah. Okay. Well, guess we can get into some assets here. That was a pretty brief macro discussion about the end of the bull market. Unless there's anything else.
I mean, I don't think it's over. And quite frankly, like I think today's a good day to buy. I know I said it like briefly, but I think that if you just like look at the pullback, and I think what will be really interesting, CJ, is the COT data that comes out next week. And we get a look at some of these major indices, including the IWM as well. I want to see how traders are positioned in these three major indices. I think that'll be very interesting. I think we'll see a lot of retail shorts. If I had to guess what the COT data will look like, we're going to see a lot of retail shorts and a lot of commercial longs. And that to me is an indication that this bull market is not over. Now, of course, we haven't gotten that data yet. I'm making a prediction about data that hasn't come out yet, but I that's just my estimate based on the rhetoric that I'm seeing on, TV, on Twitter, and elsewhere. But it looks like you have a point to make.
I was just going to disagree slightly. I think a lot of retail actually bought this dip, like friends that I know and some Twitter accounts. I mean, we'll see. Who cares? Let the data decide.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's like it's that meme where, from a bullish perspective, it's like down only. I bought, goes up 1%. Yes, that's basically where the bears are at. So
yeah,
perhaps we could go a little bit lower. They look a little bit correct, start celebrating, and then, then we reverse. Who knows? We'll see. But yeah, let's jump into some specific stuff.
Yeah, let's do it. One thing that I wanted to just quickly talk about was Apple. I think this is a very interesting looking chart. And if you do agree with my sentiment that, this is the bottom and that we are going to climb higher, this is a very unique buying opportunity for Apple. And there are some interesting ways you could play this with options due to, the fact that it's, kind of leveling off a little bit here and has leveled off in the last 4 days. And that's something that we talked about 2 days ago, is how, maybe don't try and catch the falling knife or don't try and buy the doji candle on the reversal because the options will be very expensive. And the cost of the options have come down significantly as we've kind of been grinding sideways here, more down than sideways. But nonetheless, the price of options has come down. They're probably going up as I speak. So if you do want to make a play, I'd make it now. Perhaps consider, selling some puts into this, or I would maybe just buy some at the money calls. I think that the risk reward looks very, very favorable, especially when you consider that we're talking about Apple here. You don't often see a buying opportunity like this. And for me, this is kind of, I don't want to say it's a no brainer, but like this is something that I think at the very least we get a move back up towards 188 and then eventually fill this gap up to 192 at the very least. If it doesn't make new all-time highs, that's fine. I don't need it to. I think that this move is definitely something that we could see from Apple, and this is a unique buying opportunity. So whenever I see one of those, I try and share them. But what are your thoughts, CJ? Do you think that we're going to see a reversal in some of these big tech names, or you still waiting patiently to deploy that capital?
Yeah, I mean, here, I guess I'll just bring up my chart, help explain the points a little bit more. Yeah, so I mean, look, like, yeah, Apple had a great run. In terms of seasonality, like this could go on for a little bit longer, I think. There's no reason we can't really go down to this next level in the NASDAQ of like 14.5 before breaking into new all-time highs. And then like the safer play, if you're looking at tech names, I would just wait. Like if you're, especially in terms of like an options trade, I would just buy the breakout of the all-time high instead of trying to catch like a falling knife, which might be support. Like it reminds me of trying to buy Bitcoin as it was coming down from like 53K, 45K. It's like just let it fall and then start going back up, as opposed to like buying something that's reversing trend for the first time in a very long time. So like I'm just more content to just wait and do nothing. I'll get stopped out of these NASDAQ shorts and these ES shorts, if we end up getting some more bullish price action. But to me, like there's no reason why we can't go like, something like this first before continuing to new all-time highs. Sorry about the crudeness, but you get what I'm trying to say. So, and because like that's the price action that brings in a multitude of new shorts. Right now, I still think you have people who remember this green who are really buying the dip. And like, just to go back into something that I saw personally, like I just can't be long when like folks like this who were basically who were wrong the entire year are now like 100% allocated. That makes no sense to me. This was literally at the top. And so, yeah, I have no real desire to get long into that. I could be proven wrong. Maybe today is the local low and we'll buy back into momentum next week or something. But as of now, like I'm just going to be continuing to do trend following, with this bearish crossover and just letting the COT kind of fall. But then again, today's close will be very important. But yeah, Monday might be an interest. I would probably wait till Monday if I was going to get long, being one of the most bearish days.
Yeah, understandable, especially considering that, bearish cross in that chart. I mean, how often has it been wrong? Not very often. When you see that, it's typically a good indication that we may be in for an extended period of downward price action. And I think you made a good case for it, but it will be interesting to see. But let's dive into some crypto names. Let's start with Bitcoin. I mean, there's really not a whole lot to say about Bitcoin at this point. I think that as long as we're in this range, you don't want to be trading it. Now, someone on Twitter was asking, like, what about spot buying Bitcoin here? What do you think about that? I actually don't hate that at all because one, you have defined risk, right? You have a clear level where you can cut your losses. Anything below, anything that tests these wicks here, I would probably just cut it because we've had some pretty strong supply absorption, but the third time around, you may not get that. So you have defined risk, and also you have decent upside potential with this range looking relatively decent. So I don't hate a spot buy of Bitcoin here. I wouldn't trade this with any leverage. I wouldn't short it or anything like that. I think there are better opportunities. And let me just quickly name one that I think looks particularly interesting as a shorting opportunity. And then I'll pass back to you, CJ. But that's Aave. And we haven't talked about Aave recently. But, a lot of the OG DeFi names have been hit pretty hard. But Aave is approaching a level that I would define as what would be a breakdown level. And if you're looking for a trigger for entry, essentially this $66 level for Aave has acted as strong support in the last couple of days, but I don't think that this support's going to hold up. And if it does, uh, bounce from these levels, it's clear that nobody from this wick, it's clear nobody wants it above $68. So where to cut your losses. Again, a trade with defined risk. And I think that the breakdown, the possibility of a breakdown, like the R&R of this trade, is actually looking pretty favorable. If you were looking to have exposure to the downside in some sort of crypto asset. So I think that this is one of the more interesting looking charts in the space in terms of like vulnerability. This is a lot of distribution that occurred here, indicative of some or perhaps indicative of the end of this slight upward momentum it had going for it. So that's one play that I have on my radar today. Like I said, $66 is the trigger for entry for me. And if it hits that, I will be likely shorting it. But that is pretty much my only crypto asset that I'll be trading. But as for crypto related equities, CJ, anything in particular that you are trading or taking a look at?
I had that Coinbase open for probably like an hour yesterday or two, and then just sold it off. It just doesn't feel right yet.
You've
I want to
become,
wait till some type of stabilization or positive momentum. We'll see. What are
yeah,
you gonna say?
nothing. I was just gonna say, like, I mean, it may not be obvious to you or to like our viewers, but like to me, someone who talks with you every day, it's funny how much more of a conservative trader you've become. Like in terms of like waiting for clear signs of momentum, and I think I think that's a good thing. We all learn from past mistakes. Like I still think I need to be more like you in the sense that be patient, wait to deploy the capital, and like you said, you enter that Coinbase trade, it didn't feel right, and you exited. I needed to do that more. I like will enter a trade and I'll be like, I had this in mind and I'm gonna ride with this, but if it doesn't feel right and you think you're too early, then just get out. Um,
You can
and
always get
don't
back in.
Yeah, you can always get back in. Exactly. And there's just no reason to be impulsive in these markets. And I think that that's something that we can all learn from CJ and something that I've definitely noticed you've incorporated into your trading strategy a lot more in like the last 6 months or so.
Yeah, I mean, Coinbase is one that's very specific. And I think I love when I hear people say, especially like young traders, because I used to think about this as well. I love when people say, "Yeah, I'm so good at trade entry, but I suck at trade exit." It's like, dude, entering trades is the easiest thing to like. We can all enter trades, and then we only remember the ones that worked, and we're like, "Wow, we're so good at it." But in reality, like we're not. It's just the state of how things work. Um, but yeah, I always kind of laugh at that. Um,
Yeah.
it's harder to actually trade less than it is to trade more.
100%, 100%. Especially when the markets are looking like this, right? Like even like myself, like I'm so tempted to buy like everything here. It feels like a fire sale. And like the impulsive part of me wants to be buying everything, but I think CJ's approach is the appropriate approach to the current price action and the current macro environment that we're in. Just wait a little bit, because this slight interim bounce that we're seeing right now, that's not indicative of the fact that tomorrow we don't absolutely get hit over the head, or excuse me, on Monday we don't get hit over the head with some absolutely bearish price action that really cues, like CJ is talking about, like the bears to enter. I think we haven't seen that like trigger yet, and we talk about that a lot, right? Where like the flip switch, or like the switch flips between bullish and bearish. And I think that if Monday opens up and we see some overwhelmingly negative price action, that would be an indication for a lot of bears to start entering the market and and potentially drive us lower to those levels you mentioned earlier. So, yeah, I think there's a case we made for, both an interim bounce here, but also, a more secular downtrend in the long term. So, but we have a couple of questions to address. Bob asks, do we get a spot ETF today, or do they delay again? My Magic 8 Ball says it will be delayed again. Yeah, my Magic 8 Ball says outlook not good. And I'm not talking about the email provider. I'm talking about the fact that we're going to get an ETF. I don't think it's going to be today. I think 3 months. There was a rumor yesterday, I believe, that broke that like 3 months is the target. And that's what they're shooting for. So I would expect to really hear talks of that ETF ramp up around maybe like, Thanksgiving time. I think, heading into Q4, if they have it up and running by Q4, that would be massive. And I think that is a possibility. I'm so childish. That made me laugh incognito.
Oh, man. Man, I was just about to go on some serious philosophical rant too, and then that comment derailed me.
It caught me off guard too, but it was funny.
So yeah, I think now is probably a decent time to talk about the ideas. We were gonna do a late stream last night, but just couldn't get it technically figured out yet. But I was going to talk about like a lot of philosophy and how it kind of relates to markets and is very relatable. Monte and I before the show were talking about like Lao Tzu and a lot of that philosophy and the idea of how like humans actually inhibit their own progress and derail their own like goals and achievements, not only by worrying but also overacting, in our case, over trading, and not waiting for like the precise right moment to strike. And I think, to Monty's point earlier, it's like the market will likely tell you when. In Coinbase's, perspective, like during that run up, everybody looks back at that day when we went from like 81 to 100, and it was a 24% move in one day. You could have caught that still by, riding the trend from lower levels once it started going from, 50 up then to 60. So like the market was telling you at that point that strength was there and bids were coming in. So I think like that lack of action or that inaction that we often underestimate can actually be very, very powerful, especially in the long term. So
yes, there's a lot.
Should I read a bar from here or something? Should I?
A bar. That's what I was joking that, and this is something like that I've been joking about for a while, that Lao Tzu is like the original rapper because he's like the way
It's
he
not
writes.
like a long book. It's all just like,
Yeah,
one
he's
poem and then it just goes on.
he's spitting bars. He's spitting bars. And I'm sorry. I'm still laughing at this. It's incognito. I love you, man. That was good. Thank you for that was. I don't know why I found that so funny. I think it's just because CJ was about to talk about Taoism, and then you dropped that comment. Chat, it was just perfect timing. Good stuff, man. Good stuff. But there were a few other things I did want to talk about that in a serious nature. All right, let me gather myself. I'm good. All right. And that is the crypto related equities. Because they're pumping actually, CJ. I don't know if you've looked, but bam, look at Mara. God dang. That's a decent looking chart if I do say so. I mean, today's candle is looking very good. And this is pretty interesting, right? Because earnings, let me pull up the daily chart. Sorry. Earnings was just a few days ago and they missed pretty significantly. And that led to obviously a drop in price, but it was bought up pretty quickly. And you can see that there is decent supply absorption below $15 from Mara. Not we were below that level for a bit yesterday, but already today we're back above that level. So it makes me wonder, like, is this a good time to be buying Mara? I think that the one good thing you'd have going for you, like all the other trades I mentioned today, is that if you are to buy Mara today, you have clearly defined risk. If it dips below 15, cut it, because that's where I would define the weakness. But I think there is a possibility we see a little bit of mean reversion and some positive price action in Mara. It's outperforming the rest of the market. I know it's not always easy to buy a stock that's up 4% on the day, but that being said, when this is up 4% and you have the rest of the market looking like this, like nothing is looking that good except for some of the crypto related equities. So Mara, Riot, they look very similar, and I think you could play them both the same way. With Riot, I would cut it just right below essentially the same exact level, 15. So pretty easy to remember. You have the same stop loss for both of them, 15. If it, or in this case, actually, sorry, it's not the same. It's a little bit lower, but anything below 14.5, I would cut that trade. But I do think there is a chance we see some potentially positive price action on the back of an overreaction to earnings, to the downside. We saw the inverse in a lot of the tech names, right, where they beat earnings and then they pulled back. I think we could be seeing the inverse here with things like Mar and Riot, where they missed earnings. We saw a bit of an overreaction in terms of trading to the downside, and then now it's coming back up. So could be worth a shot. There is good R&R, I think, in terms of defined risk. So I think both of them, if you're you're not going to buy Bitcoin, right? Like you're not going to be trading Bitcoin. That's not going to be where the volatility is going to happen. If there is volatility in the space, I think it's going to happen here in the crypto related equities, and we're already seeing that today. So, but just be careful because the volatility is very high. Options are going to be very, very expensive, and you'd probably be best served just buying spot, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think most of retail would be probably better off just not trading options in general. But yeah,
I mean that
goes for me too. Like anyways, I want to talk about a couple. We're coming up on the 30-minute mark, so we will wrap the show up in a bit. But I do want to just show you a couple charts from Q's assets because I think they're kind of interesting looking to me, at least.
Let's see them.
All right. First is going to be NVIDIA.
NVIDIA, as John would say.
NVIDIA. That's how you say it, right? Have I been saying it wrong the whole time?
No, you're saying it right.
N.
Yeah,
What's the wrong way to say it?
NVIDIA.
Anyways, yeah. Slight vulnerabilities here. That's all I'm trying to say in the video. I'd say this is the first time it kind of looks like anything close to distribution. Similar type of thing with Tesla, but I guess we have filled that gap now. The one that I was looking at earlier that looks kind of even worse than NVIDIA is Broadcom.
Oof. That is an ugly looking chart.
It's a tough dip to buy, right? It's a tough dip to buy.
I wouldn't be buying that. No. If anything, I'd be shorting that. It's also tough to short it after a pullback like that. But, I mean, that's not a very good looking chart. And Broadcom is what? Like the 6th highest or no,
I don't know how big it is in terms of Q's assets. I don't think it has a very high weighting.
Yeah, it doesn't. I know it's below 2%, but
I'm not saying this would be a huge impact. I'm just saying, like, from a charting perspective and what we've seen in the last 3 days,
so
doesn't
what would
give
you
a whole lot of confidence. I'm not really looking at these in terms of, like, let me try to give an analogy to the Bitcoin market. Like, let's say Bitcoin just had a massive rally and has started to kind of stall out and then is like turning over. But you have other assets like Solana that were making all-time highs that were first starting to break. Like, that's kind of how I view Broadcom. It's kind of like I hesitate to even say this, but like a Luna or a Solana of the last cycle, but with actual fundamentals. They start to turn last and turn pretty hard.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see. It feels like we could go back to 750 pretty quickly. So it's just pointing out vulnerabilities is really all I'm doing here. I'm not trading around those assets. I just think that could have like maybe interesting implications for the Qs or whatever.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. 30-minute mark, and we haven't even mentioned a single commodity. Wouldn't be money in motion, CJ, if you didn't talk about at least one. What do you got for us in terms of commodities trades?
I was getting screwed in the energies earlier today. So yeah, we could talk about that. I think my main problem there is that, like, I think it's maybe better to start waiting till you get some type of moving average turnover. In terms of like if you look at like capturing losses, I don't know. I guess sometimes it happens with cocoa where you have like a very strong reversal intraday, but I don't know. The energies haven't seemed to break down a little bit. Closed copper a little too early. I mean, that thing's just been atrociously weak and is down another like 1.5% earlier today. Continues to be down. That's rallied back a little bit. Soybean oil did look decent as a short earlier today, but it's rallying back. So I mean, it's just nothing to really touch there. In terms of like commodities and positions I have open, I'm really just looking at equity index, shorts, energy. If it starts to turn and roll over, which it's not yet, people are still bidding it even during the weakness this morning. And then cocoa. Hopefully cocoa goes down. Like, let's look at this chart because it's just very entertaining, and then we'll wrap it. We'll call it a day.
Yeah, it is one of the more crazy looking charts. Straight up hockey stick. You could actually go out on the ice and play hockey with that.
I don't want the 12-month chart. I want the 1-month chart. All right. Yeah, so I mean, these boom and bust cycles are quite interesting. You look at what price has done after like consecutive bullish months. maybe something like that. Or like I like this in 2018, you had 4 months of just ripping to the upside, which kind of looks similar to the last 4 months we've experienced this year. And then, you basically round tripped. And the nice thing about cocoa is that like all these commodities, aside from the last year or two because of inflation and a weak dollar, you have seen a super cycle in commodities, but typically they don't have upward drift over time. I mean, if you just look at them in comparison to like equities, so these are the markets that I think are really like a lot more appropriate for expressing short views from a long-term time period. I think the macro short in equities is like the most asinine thing to argue for. Like if you're a bear always in equities, like
you're
you just
swimming
end up
against the stream.
looking. What?
You're swimming against the stream. To go back to your previous analogy, and to go back to Lao Tzu.
Yeah, you're not being water.
No, but seriously, like the S&P goes up and to the right. That's what it does. So shorting it is like you're already trading at a disadvantage. So to CJ's point, there's no upward drift when we're talking about commodities. So like, I think if you're a bear and you want to express a bearish view, commodities are the place to do it, not equities. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the bearish rhetoric is very sensational, or it's grounded in like a lot of sensationalism. Watch us not trade higher after I say that, but in many cases, like people who I honestly don't get it. Like I think people want to excite fear in others because it gets clicks, it sells books, it gets viewers, but it rarely pays out to the people who buy puts. Anyways, we've done enough shitting on the Bears for enough episodes. So
there's never enough of that. There's never enough.
I mean, I have short positions open technically, so I mean, whatever. We'll see how things turn out. You can't fight upward drift. It's a losing battle. It's a losing battle.
That's true. That's true.
All right. Well, that should be a good show. And I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you here back on Monday. Don't forget, if you'd like to see our trade insights in real time and get access to our weekly reports and sentiment dashboard for crypto, check out tradethechain.com for 14-day free trial. Money back guaranteed if you don't like it. And yeah, hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. Get away from the charts and spend some good time with the family. So yeah, I'll leave it with that. See you back here Monday.
Have a great week.